I'm a supporter of youth baseball.
You're all set to
Sorry to
go.
get you out. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I will call this meeting to order. This is the regularly scheduled Town Council Communications Committee. Today is Wednesday, July 10th, and it is 4 p.m. Let the record show that in attendance are myself, April Seither, John Anderson, and Don Cushing is also here. Item 3 is approval of the minutes from June 12th, 2024. I have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Nope, I'm all set too. All those in favor?
Nope.
Great. Item 4, and this was, we talked last meeting about streamlining the agenda a little bit and not making it so itemized, and kind of just giving the town council a portion of the meeting to deal with our standing business and then turn it over to the town so that they could discuss any updates or standing business that they had. And so we'll try this today, and if it doesn't work, then we'll go a different way. But for item 4, town council communications planning, in my mind, this is just our regular standing business. So, Counselor Corner articles, we have Karen, scheduled to have something submitted to you by tomorrow, for the July 15th e-newsletter, about the land bond and the work that the PCLB does, and whatever direction she takes with that. But we need authors for August 1st and August 15th. Suggestions?
I was thinking, Nick mentioned at our last council meeting about doing a reflection on goals year to date. So I feel like that could be a good article for August 1st. And then for the 15th, perhaps if we're acting on referendum questions at the next meeting, based on the workshop, because right, we have a workshop next week, somebody could write an article. Like I would volunteer to say, we had a workshop, here's what we talked about, here's what we decided, or we're voting on it on that meeting, but that might be something to just put out there before we vote on it.
Yep, so in terms of upcoming meetings, we had our leadership meeting this morning to set next Wednesday's agenda, and it's a lengthy agenda. And then we had also talked about meeting to go into executive session to discuss the contracts one more time. And then with our summer meeting schedule, only having the one July meeting and the one August meeting, we had tentatively pitched the idea that we would have an additional workshop on August 7th, which is that first Wednesday in August. And that we would potentially start the meeting with Nick just doing a little review of our goals.
Okay.
Because we just couldn't figure out a way to like get that onto the July agenda. It was already so long. And then move into executive session. And then I had actually proposed that we talk about having Counselor Corner live that night as well.
Okay.
And so anybody who wants to stay through for Counselor Corner live, we'll just bump Counselor Corner live to 6:30. And do it 6:30 to 8. And that way we can take care of some town council business that we just don't have time for on the agenda. And then also that's kind of built-in standing time for a lot of counselors anyway. I also talked to Andrew Mackey for about a half an hour yesterday, and he has like all kinds of summer engagements and evening meetings and info sessions at the library and all kinds of things. So it was going to be challenging to find a day when someone from the land trust could come to the Counselor Corner live, and the 7th worked for Andrew as well. So if we could finalize that, I will send that information to Karen so that she can put it in her Counselor Corner, or I'll just drop it into her Counselor Corner when she sends it. And then I can also confirm with Andrew that we are going to do that Counselor Corner live on the 7th. How does all of that sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll have a workshop on the 1st potentially to talk about goals. On the 7th.
So I would almost flip flop your two ideas.
That makes
So
sense.
we're gonna have the referendums workshop is next Wednesday.
Mhm.
That's our workshop time. So if somebody wanted to draft an article that summarizes the referendum questions and the discussion to that point, then that could be our August 1st. And then we could ask Nick to do the goals one for the 15th.
You could also plug the council point workshop on the land bond on your column on the first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll give us
Continue the-
that'll give us two opportunities in print.
Perfect.
Awesome. So that covers all three topics for me, the Counselor Corner articles, the Counselor Corner Live, and I wanted to touch base a little bit, with the land bond, but we can do that in item 6 of the agenda. And so if you guys don't have any other standing business, I'm gonna turn it over to town staff.
So you want to bring up your slide?
Sure, thank you. I just did a quick bulleted list, so you could see it visually of, things I wanted to inform you on that I've been working on. The first and the largest is developing, kind of a communications calendar of the major topics and projects that are happening right now and looking ahead through the fall, even up to November with the election. So right now I'm working on a calendar that, kind of shows, it'll indicate the timeline for each of these and when I'm gonna start communicating about it, and even just now talking about the Council Corner Live and plugging in these Council Corner article topics, that'll be good to include in these, but it's basically just keeping track of all of these moving parts and trying to get ahead of just kind of informing people about a date that something's happening, but also getting more like the content too, and being able to pull that out to make it accessible for people. And then for ones like the new fire pumper truck and the police cameras, we'll be working with those departments, just to make sure we're aligned on their own campaign for it and that it's integrated with, town communications. And then also just kind of with our conversations that we've had around thinking about what the purpose of the message is, what the key points are, and what we're trying to get people to, take away from it. I'm just being conscious of that. So I'm in this brainstorming phase right now. And it seems like a lot of it's gonna kick off more in earnest in August. So yeah, giving myself the next couple weeks to work on that. So also we have a board and committee newsletter that we've been doing March, July, November type of sequence. So that one's coming up at the end of July. So just working with staff on that. The photo contest launched a couple weeks ago, so that's been getting some good response so far. So I'm gonna be using that, and that's gonna just be an ongoing kind of fun thing this summer to roll out on social media. And something that one of my goals that I've been thinking about, and I can't remember if we've talked about it as a group, but doing more engagement to the public, the general public who aren't necessarily an active subscriber or follower of town news. So I have been looking into what it would take to do a print mailing, maybe like a 4-page spread or something, and kind of taking the high level points from our bi-weekly newsletters, but culminating them into maybe like a spring and a fall edition or something like that. And then another thought is getting the addresses of homes that were recently sold and then sending out a welcome packet to new residents, just with kind of like basic overview information. So yeah, just thinking of ideas about that and reaching out to the local printer that we use in other departments.
One thing that this made me think of, are we gonna have a booth at Summerfest for the council or?
That was on my list too. So the email went out with the request for vendors, and since it's a generic email that she sends out to people who, you know, have a food truck or a tent or whatever, but we now are part of that group. So I responded yes and figured that's, you know, better to hold it and have that table and have them plan on us. And then I'm happy to do some outreach with the council and get some volunteers. It's always a tricky one. This year I can do it. Last year I felt terrible because I was trying to get people to do something that I couldn't do. So
I can do it. I just have another booth I'm gonna be at too, so I won't be able to be there the whole time, but I can.
well, aren't you just a
part-time.
man of the town?
I'm so bored.
You can hop between your
Yeah, I'll hop between booths.
Swap out your name bag.
Summerfest date is
The 14th of August.
okay. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to this land bond plan, topic that we have on the agenda too, because that'll help.
Great.
Fill in my calendar.
The only friendly suggestion I would have to like keep on your radar too. And it's probably more just making sure we're supporting them as whatever the SBAC comms committee is gonna be doing. Like, I just don't wanna lose the momentum.
That's a good
of
point, yeah,
communication.
kind of like. Wrapped it up with the last, presentation, but yeah, knowing that it'll resume with phase two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my assumption is that committees. My understanding was the board voted to keep that committee, the subcommittee moving.
Mhm.
And so I just wanna make sure
Mhm,
it doesn't stop and then we start
then
again
yeah.
later, like, how do we keep
yeah,
the conversation going, even if it's just light mention to different things?
yep, they've been really communicative too this round, so that's
Mhm.
really helpful and, yeah, good point to not drop it off.
Anything else on the town side? Questions for Allison or Liam?
And one question, so maybe just an observation, suggestion. When I look at the list here, I'm trying to think of it in terms of a broad message. One side of it is what's coming, why, how does this benefit you?
Hmm,
And the other side of it is what happened and how does this benefit you? So I don't know where like Scottsville Road fits in there. As an example, other unless that's just on there warn you that the Scottsville state bird is the yellow cone of the orange cone. So I'm not sure what you mean by Scottsville Road, but that's just pretty that general proposition
yeah,
of they need to get for your money.
Yeah, just the North Scarborough Road work is, I think at there's some intersection redesign work that went into improve safety. Plus, there's a had a high incidence rate of accident versus on the street, just, but that would be part of our message.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
are
see
the
it.
traffic lights all turned on?
I do not have an update on
Just curious.
I see a theme of, conservation and climate change.
that's what I noticed
Traffic.
too, I saw a lot of conservation, so it, yeah, like we have a sustainable Scarborough Day coming up again in October, so I thought, I was, yeah, lining up like, oh, those would be good to have, tabling for that. And then I also see it as these are projects that are kind of being happening now, but looking towards the future, kind of a proactive approach to future CIPs and funding. Yeah, I was trying to think of some other key messaging of like how to, I like that you pointed out the conservation piece, but like
I see
other ways of
Like,
talking about it.
kind of investing in our infrastructure, kind of with the community center, fire engine, police cameras. Depending on how far we go or what we decide tomorrow in finance committee, we're starting the conversation around our council goal for developing the capital plan. So there may be like this theme of like, hey, we have capital investments. We're starting a process to look at the big ones.
Am I
Mm.
correct in remembering that deal there is that you're looking at capital stuff, which is basically maintenance kinds of things, right? Which investments that have already been.
Like replacement plan.
Replacement. like-
For our goal, it's more about the big investments that are coming.
Right.
Don asked us to look at that piece, which is not on the agenda for tomorrow. That's something that I think we're waiting to see if,
But
when Liam provided
the
information.
point was to differentiate between.
Yeah.
Normal. Replacements.
Yeah.
We're continuing to maintain infrastructure and so forth,
Mhm.
which is technically capital spending versus we're gonna buy some new stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I see like with the police cameras, like some of it fit multiple themes, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, and then I was wondering about community center, like what the theme is with that one.
I think that's the capital priority piece, right? Like we need to make these investments and different capital pieces. If we add the SBAC on here, that's the school piece. And we have other choices coming that are big investments for the public. With the referendum for the fire engine, police cameras, land bond. And so it's like, we want to continue to provide good services for our community, and these are
Okay,
investment
okay.
choices we
Yeah,
have.
investments, make sure that we're framing it as, these are investments we're making.
Yeah,
And these are the public benefits that you'll get from the investment.
and when you have to decide to vote,
Right.
hopefully you'll figure out whether it's a good investment for what you're looking for.
I was also wondering if the new fire truck, the police cameras and the land bond, if it would be better to treat them each as their own 3 different talking points, or to talk more holistically about what's coming up in the November ballot.
I think we do both, right? That's kind of like what I would think I'm gonna do for my counselor corner, is like. Talk broadly, but then talk about each one, but I'm sure each one deserves its own. Detailed article in the future.
Right, yeah. They each need their own 3, but then like, is there any overarching sort of like message around?
So on the fire engine, I think it'll be very important to convey to people why we vote on the fire engine. I don't think that's top of mind for people. And then the second piece is to put it in a longitudinal perspective so that people don't have the sense that we are just deciding to go out and buy a fire engine.
Mhm.
But in essence, my understanding, of it, which makes great sense, is that there's a lot of lead time involved, cheaper in the long term to replace these things while they still have residual value, all of that stuff. So the major message for all of some of these things is that this is fiscally responsible. It's not, but there's a very common perception, this perception, and that is that we just go buy stuff. I hear that a lot. They're just gonna spend more on them. And what's interesting about it is that these referendums have a dimension to them, which is, this is how we tell you we don't like the perception that you spend all our money. So what I can do is I can say, yeah, you probably need a fire truck, but this is the only control I have, so no. And so I think you need to be mindful of that as you convey this, because there are a lot of people out here who say, I'm sorry.
Sure.
You know, I heard somebody say, we have a ladder truck, I don't think we have a building that's that tall.
Yeah, I feel like that's harder to do for the police camera one though, to like. Cause that is really.
Isn't that already approved?
It has to go to referendum.
So you approve it you approve it as part of your capital plan, the budget, then over to the essentially as it requires.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I think that's the same thing, is that there's, you know, tons of evidence that says that this actually saves us money. And that these are not expenses, they're investments. And so that's the kind of messaging, think
Yeah.
whether or not it'll be affected by the problem.
Right.
But that's the tone of it.
Maybe that's kind of like, you're making me think, like, are there like 3 messages you make for each one? It's what's the fiscal benefit? What's the public benefit? And then is there a different benefit that you would want to just highlight? And again, different ones are going to be different.
They'll be different. You have to think that, you know, the fire engine is basically an extension of the idea that we all benefit from having an up-to-date responsive fire department.
Yeah.
I think that's one. I think the police body camera one is a hope that protects you, it protects the town. So if somebody stops you and an officer is out of line, that's gonna be, so it creates a situation where it creates accountability for the police officers and also protects them from the bad people who might otherwise be able to sue us for doing the things. So, yeah.
Mhm.
All of them on there. I see transportation study. Just trying to give you some of the negative perspectives.
Yeah,
I see transportation
conscious
study
of
and I say, let's buy some more consultants. Hey, let's just do another report. I had a friend who was a consultant, a very successful one, and he refuses to write reports. The client said, you want a report? He says, I'm not here to give you cover so that you can show around that you've done a consulting report. If you want to solve the problem, then I'll write you a report after we're all done on the solve the problem. And so there's a perception around those things that we're just going to study it and not going to do anything.
Well, what comes out of that study is gonna be significant capital investments that we're gonna have to make as a town to improve traffic. So it's like, to me, it's
so
like,
provide
the
the
precursor.
path to do.
yeah, because there's already the master plan that we got that is driving the impact fees was part of the study.
Yeah.
And so there's another part in there on Highest Parkway that's also a master plan that's gonna indicate a significant investment we're gonna have to make in the future if we wanted to make changes to Highest.
So the question I have is that how these things are taking place over a long period of time. And so, sort of the rule of advertising is how many impressions do you get? How many, and one doesn't cut. And so each one of those topics, it seems like they're worthy of multiple pieces of information, multiple points of content. I don't know that we have the channels that actually support that. We have the newsletter, and we have the council corner. And what else do we have that would allow us to have an ongoing, or at least snippets?
There are public meetings scheduled for open space plan, vulnerability assessment. I imagine there's gonna be a workshop on the transportation study in the fall. And then I know a few of these departments have plans to be at Summerfest to kind of be doing the public engagement piece. And then also just a matter of pulling out content and being able to talk about it on rotation.
I think the land bond item, when we get to that, would be a good example to run through that, because I think I've even heard here, like you said, oh, the sustainability day is happening. Like, I hope there's a booth to talk about the land bond, or that again, we align, maybe we need a booth there too, and we talk about the land bond, or we ask the sustainability or PCLB, hey, are you guys gonna get a booth and be there? Because that's really your audience that you would want to talk to about the land bond. So I think maybe if we use that and start, like, because I agree with you, like, I was looking at this assuming these are like the key focuses and that they're gonna be kind of
Yeah,
out.
fill it,
Yeah.
yeah, filling it in with the dates and the channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we kind of just merge into the next agenda item, which I was hoping that this committee would kind of use as an exercise to do exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
And so, Liam, if you could pull up the communications plan framework. So if we could just take a stab at filling this in, and I, as this conversation, as I've been listening to you guys, the last thing I want to do is give the perception that we are putting more emphasis on the land bond question than we are the other two questions. I had chosen the land bond to work our way through this framework as kind of an example of maybe how we would work as a committee. And so that we have something that, you know, the public can see and they can see our train of thought and have a line of sight into what our work is. That being said, like, I'm open to, if we wanted to broaden this to make it referendum questions, we could try and tackle all three. my brain doesn't function like that. My brain wants to take each one.
Yeah. Let's do
separately.
each one, so, like, I
I
think
think
it's
the land
easier.
bond is helpful.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so if we refer to this project as land bond referendum, the timeline is between now and, November. What's the date of the election?
I would even argue that we started it in June. When we had a finance committee meeting, so if people wanted to
Sure.
like start.
Okay.
Sure.
So. Once the council decides to put this out to referendum.
Mhm.
Is that all we've decided, or have we decided that we think the land bond is productive?
No. So the council would just endorse it being on the
We
referendum.
just put it on the.
Yeah, and then as individual counselors, whether or not we support it. There's no formal council action taken to support the land bond itself. And so that's one of those times when, as individual counselors, we all can have our own opinion and there's no quote unquote party line on supporting or not supporting.
Mhm.
It doesn't, also, the council may not put it.
Right? Yes, that's
Yeah.
entirely possible too.
You
Well,
put
that's
it in the
sort
budget.
of an interesting thing, because we had the ability to vote to keep it off the ballot, which is basically saying collectively no, but we have no mechanism to say collectively yes, which basically means, which I would suggest that maybe somebody should make a motion that the council actually endorse it. And I don't know how that happens in this context. You guys do leadership and so forth, but and then if somebody like me raises his hand out of blue and says, I'd like to, make a motion that this council endorse the land bond. Well, that's not going to be during this
Right.
case of time. So I guess what I'm saying is, I would like to, if the council, if there was an agenda item, which put us all on record to decide to be supportive of the land bond or not supportive.
I think that's what the workshop will,
What tends to happen is anytime something like this, when we vote to put something on a referendum, we've done it for the library, we did it for the school project. Is council will make counselors will make their individual statements, kind of their position statements. And inevitably, at least one person will say, I'm not necessarily in favor of this, but I am in favor of putting it to the people.
Which is fine.
And so then it
So
goes to
I
the
would like-
people.
But I'd like to fill that in, it just says pass the name. But I can't
Right,
say that,
you cannot.
okay?
well, and I don't,
Because I could say that, if simply we put the council on record as saying it is the council's position, whether it's 6-1 and 5-7
Mhm.
or whatever, I could very easily say that our mission here is to pass land.
Yeah.
So
I think,
I don't want to believe
Yeah.
that one, but
I think our mission is not necessarily to pass it. Our mission is to adequately inform the public to make a decision whether they want to support it or not at the polls,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yes, that's what should be under the present circumstances.
yeah,
I'm just saying that on some of these issues. We take a position of what you're about. Where these guys can have
Yeah.
have loud music after 10 o'clock. This strikes me as more important.
I think the difference is our charter. We don't have the authority because of the value, so like. If it was under $600,000.
Then
it
it's
will-
council authority. You
Yeah.
could just-
Right, but I think it really is a key point, because you're right. We by charter have to make a decision to put it to
Yeah.
the voters. We cannot put it to the voters, but there isn't anything that prevents us from going on record collectively and saying your town council supports this. Or we could go the opposite way and say your town council does not support this, but we also feel that you deserve the right to vote on it. Right.
Yeah.
That's a little weird.
Yeah.
Some communities actually, they allow for or require preference votes.
What is that?
But
So there was so the town of Kennebunk, actually, they had an issue, was road acceptance. And so the 5 members of the select board, 5 to 2 voted to send it to the voters. And they have a secondary vote for, do you support the passage of it? And that was a different vote. That was a 4-3 vote.
I'm interested.
Right.
So, because
Yeah.
someone said, I support putting it to the voters based on the merits of whatever, but I personally don't support it being passed by the voters.
And I could easily fall into that category because I believe that I should not impose my view. When by charter we decided that this is your prerogative,
Mhm.
but as your representative body, I think that if we take that position, then it does put us in a position to say, okay, if we don't support it, then we wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to communicate it or inform it, we would just let it go. But if we do support it collectively, then we would do this. So implicit in the fact that we're going to communicate
Mhm.
vigorously about this, we are implying that we support it, but we can't say we're going to. I've made my point. So that's, so that we're gonna adequately inform the public of the issues. That's,
Mhm.
Do you want to be more specific than that?
Um,
The intentions, the financial impact, the
yeah, I mean,
proposed uses of the funds? Which is another question
Those
on
could
this
be
one.
key messages too.
right, I would
There's
put those under.
the financial, there's a conservation 30x30 initiative. things like that.
Yeah, like simply put, like our role is to inform and engage the public so that they can make a choice whether or not to support the bond at referendum.
Mhm.
Can you say the last part again?
Nope.
Adequately inform and engage with the voters, residents, community as to,
So they can make a choice at the polls.
so the teacher in me says, when I do say adequately informed, the teacher would say the learner would be able to describe, explain, etc. So when we get down to the measurable portion of that, how do we know that we adequately inform people?
Well, so this is where I think we go back to, what are the tools that we have? And so one of the things would be measurable goals, like I would like to, drive attendance for Counselor Corner Live.
Mhm.
And then, have everyone sign in and
Yeah.
have a record of whether or not, and how people were informed and why they came to Counselor Corner Live.
So
I think,
those are typically referred to as process versus outcome measurements.
Okay,
And so, and so I agree with you, if you can't get outcome measurements, an outcome measurement would be the student will pass the test, or, when we survey, people would be able to say this, or the big one would be passed.
Right.
But we can't do any of those, so they have to be process oriented, and
So I think if our,
those are attendance, impressions, website hits, page views,
Mhm.
all of those things.
I think that, yeah, since we're talking, if our mission is to inform, then all we can really measure is
How many impressions
participation.
we get.
or just like how many offerings we provide, how many opportunities for
Yep.
public engagement do we want to have?
Yep.
How many times do we want to have content in the newsletters? Do we want content in every single newsletter leading up to November? I think we should.
Yeah. I think too, it's like, again, if there's like from a communications perspective, if we agree, like, the place that we want people to go to is the website, and a place on the website to reference. Are we seeing the clicks
Mm,
and people going to that source, right? So if we're gonna do communication in the paper, in the e-news, or even if we do something at a table, are we giving them the link and are we seeing how many times people are going to where we want them to go to get more information? Because to me, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to facilitate the information getting into the hands of voters and knowing that there's an anchor spot that's like where we're sending them, then we can then measure how many
How
people actually went
effective
there.
each of those channels.
Yeah.
To getting them there.
We get any data, engagement data on the Facebook page.
Yep,
So, I mean, broadly, those would be the things that
Mhm.
we would come back here saying, how we do. I'd be looking to say, well, we were in the leader 3 times. I multiply 3 times whatever their subscription rate is, then I can make an assumption that we've done. It's 12,000, we've done 36,000 impressions. If
Mhm.
I say we put the newsletter up there, that particular page of the newsletter, of those things was clicked X number.
Yeah.
How many impressions?
Mhm.
So if you wanted to get really metrically, we have how many households in Scaborough's, 8,000,
10,000.
10,000,
Mhm.
right? So we'll pick a round number, 30,000,
Mhm.
right? 3 impressions per household. And that's just arbitrary, but it would be interesting to see.
Mhm.
But it would have to be more than that if we come to lead. So it would have to be, we'd have to be the leader, presenting
Yeah.
the leader 3 times, that's their subscription times 3.
Mhm.
So the other ones would be the Facebook, the
Newsletters.
newsletter and an email, do we be able to?
We don't send direct email except the newsletter, right?
right.
But again, that's where you can see if we're sending the newsletter, again, maybe, we do a special edition
Oh,
for the
yes,
election?
We often
we
do
do.
election.
Yeah,
guide.
voter guide.
Yeah, so that would be a special thing that we could.
The
look
voter
at
guide, yeah.
Uniquely,
So I don't want to come under, but I guess what I'm saying is that what you'd be trying to do is put this out there so that each household at least was exposed to this,
Mhm.
I mean, we need it 5, 6 times.
I don't think it's bad to say, like, to set a goal to say we want 20,000 impressions of, across various channels that we can show, because again, that's like, I think of like, if we did a video on Facebook, those tend to get like,
That's true, those get more views than if it was just a post about it.
yeah. So I think there's a way to do things that get the traction.
Yeah.
20,000 might be too high. I'm just thinking like,
Yeah, I
voters-
don't-
if we get, I assume voter turnout's gonna be in the high 60s, 70s, potentially, right? Is that usually what it is for a presidential? I can't remember what it was last time. Is that too high?
I feel like that seems,
Is that, you know,
I mean, for like the presidential election.
So for us, that's like 15-ish thousand voters, so I would hope of those 15,000, we can try and reach at least 3/4 of them somehow, so that they at least have the opportunity to get informed. They may not take advantage of it, but to me, that's kind of,
Do you think we should do for the in-person events, any sort of like one pager or like half sheet, some informational takeaway,
I think that would be good.
if that could reach more people too?
Or even again, if we just, again, have that anchor website, it's always like here's a snippet, but if you want more information, go to the website.
Yeah,
I think you have to, you're better off with more shorter
Mhm.
and separated communication. When stuff gets buried in the newsletter, there's a ton of content.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I would advocate for the town having an app is that you can take that newsletter and you can stick it to people's phones. and
Right,
then
break it up.
It's the same amount of work, if you could break it up so that people get multiple impressions.
Mhm.
So. So it's a general rule, I would say, shorter, bullet pointed, you know.
Mhm.
Agreed. I don't think we always need an article. I think that serves a purpose in certain instances, but if we're trying to repeat the message in multiple newsletters, I'd rather just do snippets and then an article. so often.
Do we have good success when we post, when we first go to the website? And you can sometimes do that pop-up that people click
Oh.
on.
Oh, I don't know if we can track. I guess maybe we could track page views of what it's bringing you to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
think-
true. At a certain point, switching that over to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just looking today, by this old guy, got 109 views on it.
yeah.
Were you one of them, John?
No, the one thing I'm thinking though, like, again, we always tend to lean on. Like. Electronic communications, and so how do we make sure. We're engaging people who are less likely to go to a website.
Mhm.
I think of like when we went to. Hillcrest, like I think those people are, the people who live there, I think. Aren't the target using those types of channels. So what are the like the more traditional. Channels that we can reach them on? Or is it a matter of just being like, we want to hand out brochures to like 30 organizations and ask that they post them in a public place for their people, you know what I mean? Like, I always feel like there are a lot of people who aren't necessarily going on the internet to get their information, so how do we make sure we reach them too?
Yeah.
Some of that's like
But the,
being in places, but
Right,
You know, I researched my sign in Cash Corner. I had 9 million impressions a year, something like that. I don't know what the sign gets out here, but I'm sure it's in that range. So is it possible to use that sign a little bit more vigorously to figure out just teaser stuff
Mm.
on the consistent? So if you just said, all we're gonna put on the sign besides the time and temperature is snippets that tease you, maybe they ask you a question, and then those kinds of things, because that sign probably is, it's excellent, and it's maybe a little underutilized in terms of the number of impressions
that's true.
that we get.
Yeah.
But
Oftentimes we use it currently, the plug in newsletter, which is where all together.
Mhm.
yeah, well, I think if you did that, you could say, in this case, want to learn about the land bond newsletter, want to learn about the land bond
Yeah,
Facebook.
Mhm, yep.
You
Yeah.
can basically just drive people using
Mhm.
those
Yeah.
kinds of snippets.
yeah, questions about the land bond,
Yeah.
You know,
people might go, oh, I actually do have questions about. the
Yeah,
land
yeah.
bond."
Some of the-
What land bond?
who was the, should know her name, heard her so many times, but very pleasant woman who speaks passionately about the land bond from the trust. Just
To Foley Ferguson.
Foley Ferguson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem to me that when we talk about the community things,
Mhm.
then those folks ought to be the ones going out there and strongly advocating. this.
Absolutely, and that's why, like, we kind of are always doing this dance between what's the council role and, you know, what is a committee's role or what is an organization's role. Like I said, I talked to Andrew Mackey, and obviously they are in support of the land bond moving forward, and they're hoping to inform the council so that we have the information we need to put it to the voters. But it's not coming from the land trust, it's coming from
Mhm.
the PCLB. And so he's kind of doing this like dance too,
Yeah.
where, you know, there's a little bit of, I would totally agree with you, if PCLB doesn't have and Land Trust doesn't have a booth at Summerfest, you know, promoting their own interests in terms of passing the land bond, we can't, that's too big of a lift for the council communications committee to do by ourselves. So we
If
can't
we go
speak for
back to mission purpose. I'm in favor of it, but I'm not so in favor of it, that I'm gonna go down and sit in the.
Yeah.
And senior housing. Because they're not gonna wanna talk about the land bond, they're gonna wanna talk about the thing to talk about.
Sure.
That's true.
So.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's,
so,
there's a difference between advocacy and informing, right? Like,
well,
that's
yeah, I
the-
think, and,
making them know.
and some of it, I mean, I guess that really is about why it is, I think, important for the council to take a stand on things if for no other reason. And it does allow the council the freedom to go ahead and advocate for stuff that they've taken the time to analyze. I'm not saying in every instance, but in certain instances, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's not happening here. So when we talk about that level of engagement, where we're going out, I think what you guys can do as the town is you can call up McKee, you can call up Holy Fergus, and then you can say, hey, we're going to be promoting this, but you might want to step up too, because of the limits of what we can do.
Mhm. So I would say like, again, I think some of those things are things we could do. We can't require it. We can't say every counselor must participate, but I know in the past when things have happened. When the library went out, they did have a group kind of planning advocacy, and I think they invited us. But I don't think any of us went, and I think that was,
Well, if we were invited, I think, well,
yeah,
but
but I mean,
it's different.
for the school though, I know I was pretty involved and still going door to door, standing at tables, going to events. And so, but that was a choice for me as a counselor, but I did it as a counselor. I would be like, I'm Counselor Anderson, I'm supportive of this.
Sure.
I wouldn't say at the council, everybody agrees, but
Well, it's kind of a weird thing, even in that sense, because you take something that is as big and important as a school. And to say that counselors don't want to go on record saying they support it or they don't support it. Now, back when you're going out there individually, you're sort of voting with your feet. But it is an entirely different.
Mhm. But that only happens, you can only do that if the council votes it.
Yeah,
True, right.
but it's a very interesting thing to say, to have that thing, say, yes, we voted to put it out there. Because you deserve the choice. But it's sort of like the congressional thing where they vote things out of committee without a recommendation. Okay, or they voted out, like we get stuff from the town that says our recommendations that you vote for this.
Mhm.
Okay, so key messages.
So some key messages that I had written down, that I resonate with me. I don't know if they resonate with other people, but, just that conservation is a mechanism for controlling growth.
Mhm.
That conservation has a very low cost to serve. I wanted to make sure that people understood that, the bond request is not an all at once,
Mhm.
ask, that we bond it as needed.
I think it's important they understand we have a very solid governance process with the committee that governs recommendations to the council on how that money is spent if it's given to us. I'm not sure, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at the workshop, but what's the scope of it? Is it the previous land bond had a bigger scope? I know the recommendation from the PCLB is to narrow it. I think that's a conversation the council will have to decide on.
Definitely part of the agenda for the workshop.
Yeah.
We, at leadership today, Nick and I felt like we should put the whole scope from the 2019 project forward,
Mhm.
and then talk about the PCLB's recommendation to pare it down.
Yeah.
But our initial pass is going to be to look at all of it.
Yeah, and I think that was interesting because I talked to one resident and I said, I think it should be the same scope, but they very much felt like they would prefer it to just be just conservation. And so I think that's a discussion that once we know, we
Yeah.
can say why it's either the big scope or the specific scope.
Yeah.
So that way they know it could be different than what they voted on before.
It's maybe
So-
important to provide some little history. What did we
Yeah.
spend- What did we spend the money on? And what has been the effect of that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Picture worth 1,000 words. Do you know? Fuller Farm purchased the land,
Right.
did you know? That could fit on the side,
Mhm.
Mhm.
what budget, did you know?
Yeah. What else? So we did a lot on the financial. Did we talk to, like, again, there, it might be good just to talk to like. How conservation benefits the public. Like beyond just the, as a mechanism to. Counter growth. There are benefits in terms of drinking water. You know, trails. Other amenities that are things that people might care about,
Mhm.
Property values.
property values.
So that we can get more of your money at the rebate.
Yeah.
It's a two-edged sword.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What about like why now?
Yeah,
Again, we should be clear that the current one is empty.
Well, I think that an important, now this is new ones. But what we are approving is the borrowing capacity that allows us to take advantage of opportunities that are consistent with our sustainability and conservation goals. That's what we're funding.
Mhm.
And and that could happen. You could pass that on and some giant parcel of land that filled in all the dots could suddenly be available and we'd spend it all at once.
Mhm.
I mean, we just hit a pretty big chunk
Mhm.
recently for that exact reason. Or we could be not spending any of it because none of the opportunities are consistent with our goals.
correct.
I don't know how you get that message out there.
Yeah.
But it's, people will think of it as spending. But what we're doing is we are creating capacity to achieve goals that you've already approved.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That, to me, is an important message that without the money. we should-
I really appreciate it. I just was talking the way one resident kind of framed this. I'm assuming we all got an email. I can't tell anymore, like, am I getting a personal email or is it the
I
same
know.
person?
Yeah,
But they referred to it as we're asking for a line of credit, right? Like
That's exactly.
this is really a line of credit request of, we would love to have this credit available for when conservation opportunities come up. And it's the same thing, right? When you do have a line of credit, you don't start paying the interest until you start spending it.
right.
Are you gonna pay the interest on what you spend?
Well, I think that's exactly what those are like common terms. I
Mhm.
mean, it was sort of like when we were talking about. I can't even remember the name of it, but the amount of money that we reserve so that Nick can give money back when people's taxes aren't exactly right.
Really?
Overlay.
And that, to my mind, just was like, well, that's just returns and refunds.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's if you were, if you were selling a widget. You would have on your books an account with returns and refunds because you knew there were gonna be some,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think you're right, as a general rule, what language. Familiar language.
Mhm. Target audience is everyone,
I was gonna say, this is a townwide one.
every voter.
Well, this will be a historic election.
Mhm. Does this include? Like the key channels or
I was
tactics?
gonna say, that's one thing I noticed
Yeah,
that I think this worksheet needs is for us to be able to list our tools.
yeah,
We've
Tools and
listed off a
strategies or
bunch of
whatever.
them as we've talked.
yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
The sheet should.
Well, I think that
I
we,
think there's a piece we have, something, one of the communication. Examples you gave, was basically kind of matrix of all of the channels.
I think that might be in the larger.
I mean, it could be like maybe before getting to channels and tactics, like we've also talked
Oh.
more high level of like key strategies, like one strategy maybe encourage other third parties to be engaged.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that could be make sure the PCLB is engaged, make sure SOT is engaged, make sure Conservation Commission is engaged and ask them, hey, you guys come up with your own plan. We're not gonna tell you what it is, but we want you to know we have a plan
Right.
and you should have a plan too.
So, Liam, is that something you can do? Can you just call up those people and say, we met today? This is what we're going, this is what is within our scope as the town. And, we'd like to know what your plans are, or encourage you to have a plan. So,
I mean, could we? We could, you know, I think, I don't think that's something historic. I don't think there's a level, that's a level of coordination. I mean, this is a bit unique.
Yeah, this one is unique.
But, some level of coordination with outside entities to partner on messaging or coordinate our communication.
Or just kind of culminating all of it, all of the links or the posts that we've done about it, and sharing that with partners, like the land trust, and they can do with it what they,
FYI, this is what we're doing.
right.
Nice to know.
And here's
Nice to
the
know.
links to the information if you
Yeah.
want to share it.
That's what we did for the library.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's probably the best example would be the library, you know,
Mhm.
again, and.
We didn't do a lot of it, but I mean, I would,
With a level of coordination and again, we felt like the obligation was to educate and
Well,
inform,
right,
not
then it gets,
persuade or.
exactly, it gets
Yeah.
tricky, because if the land trust is saying vote yes, and then we link the land trust to
Right.
our list of resources,
Mhm.
then it comes across that the town is advocating for a yes vote, and it's just noise.
Which kind of goes back
Well,
to, I guess.
But I mean, maybe it's, again, we're talking land trust, maybe we also need to be clear that like, we should be providing the information to any influential organization, whether they're supportive or not supportive, and they can then decide
Right.
what they want to do, but we can at least guide them to say, here's the information, up to you for how you want to use it.
Mhm.
But again, encouraging third parties to like communicate, whether it's for it or against it, I don't really care. It's more,
Right.
are you getting the information out to people to make that informed decision? We also, what else did we talk about? Like strategically, I feel like we've talked about like how you make sure we have that hub of information to be able to lead people to. So to me, a lot of the channels we talked about with like social media, that's to get awareness, but how are we tracking action? That we can say, not only are they aware, but they took an action by going to the website. That just kind of indicates a little bit more in terms of actually informing them, as opposed to them just kind of seeing the,
Do you mean like putting a QR code on
could be something like that.
flyer,
to
like?
Yeah.
track it.
Or like if we make a
in the-
video,
Can you put a QR code in the paper?
I think you can.
Do they let you do that, or is it like a image?
Send it as an image, yeah.
I don't.
I don't want to pay for
I'm gonna,
that.
well, I'm number one, I don't wanna pay for it, number two, I'm gonna sound like,
I don't
I
know how to
gotta
do
look at my
that.
millennial counterpart here to make sure I don't say the wrong words.
But yeah, I mean, I think to me, that's,
But we can put it on anything, like if we were gonna
If you're
have a booth,
passing out something.
right, if we were
yeah.
gonna have a booth at Summerfest, we could have the QR code, you know, on several pieces of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And just
To go to the
encourage
website.
people to, you know, oh, while you're right here, why don't you pull it up, and then you can go back and look at it later, but.
yeah,
Mm.
because we needed
Then
our
it'll be
goal
pulled
of.
up. Right, because we are numbers driven, and we
Yeah.
like results.
Yeah.
So what Councillor Cushing referred to as process goals, those are really, I guess those are kind of engagement and outreach objectives, right? So
Mhm.
you want some metrics around that. And that's.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing we can have here. Going way back to graduate school, the two categories of process and outcome.
Mhm.
An outcome is something you can objectively measure that happens. So if you're a teacher, you're very interested in outcome. The kid learned how to read, but it has to read. The process measure was they picked up the book.
Yeah.
And so all we can do here, unless we were to survey or if we had a different goal, that outcome measure would be the referendum passed. So it really is all about how many impressions in what chain. And the goal ought to be to get as many as you can.
Yeah.
But indulge me a long time ago, Dr. Holt used to write down his swim times every day. Nick asked him, why do you do that? He said, because things that are measured before he swam twice as fast as
Yeah.
so.
What excites me if we actually do something like this for this is also knowing what works, right? Because I think we're gonna try a lot of things and you know, it'd be good to know, like-
Which one, which channel.
Yeah.
People paying attention to.
and it may inform other things, like I think the videos, I think you started the videos, I think it was just nice to see. Cause you can see on Facebook, like how many views,
Mhm.
and so when I saw that, I'm like I would actually go. And look at some of our Council Porter videos and I'd be like, I hope mine is the highest number of views. And I would look at the other ones, yeah, yeah, and so, you know, I think it does, that's what led me to say, oh, I think you just say, we need to do more videos, because they seem to just get attention.
Speaking of, who do you think would be a good person to speak to this if we did a video?
Karen.
That would be my guess, is
Yeah,
that counts.
probably one to promote Council Corner Live,
Yeah,
but in terms of like doing like mini snippet,
Yeah.
like. And even as we do like an information campaign.
Yeah.
We align on 3 or 4 different quick snippets,
yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
like,
Your did you know
Like that.
thing.
yeah,
Could be like,
exactly.
Did you know?
If I get really motivated, I might drive around to some of these preserved spaces. And
Yeah,
Oh, that'd be good to film.
There,
make a little clip.
we got
Yeah.
a video, you're a volunteer for a video series.
Yeah.
yeah. You can
I
go.
think
yeah,
all
you
this
can
stuff
go.
helps. People just like to put a name to the face.
So it sounds like maybe some additional categories we can add to the form. Which I think might be helpful.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this conversation for today, because I think we've done what we need to do in terms of setting ourselves up for a few more weeks of work towards this, and then when we reconvene in August, we will have had 2 articles and the Counselor Corner. And so we can have a discussion of where we're at in this communications plan in August, and then kind of recap the work that we've done. And then talk about some more measurables and progress towards some specific goals in August.
I really like this sheet as like a collaborative, like I feel like this is good collaboration to get brainstorming and maybe
Yeah.
get even you thinking about
Yes. this-
execution. But I still feel like it would be nice to get to in this, like, what do we uniquely own and do?
Yep.
And there might be tactics that we can say, that's what the committee's gonna support, like the booth. Counselor Corner articles, maybe doing some door to door, whatever.
Yep.
We decide, and then the town will clearly have something that's happening.
Build a web page.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Do, social media posts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyone online?
Nope.
We have no one in the room tonight for public comment. I will work with Katie on future agenda items. Item 9 is adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?